Welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host, Terry, and today, talking about police reform. It's frustrating that we have to continue to have this conversation, but it's needed. And I don't necessarily believe that I take my information, obviously, from things that I see. That's what we all do. But I don't necessarily believe that because there are people that are still online having conversations or making comments that are off the wall that I can't have to continue to have this conversation. But it's the people that have been part of this channel that I know have heard me explain this before, and yet they continue to make these comments or have this pushback against the movements going on. That's when it signals to me that we need to continue to have this conversation. I can't control what happens outside of people that listen to this. That's going to happen. New people are going to come. They're going to hear what I have to say. But the people that have heard what I have to say and continue with the same rhetoric, there's no new information. There's no new mindset. It's the same rhetoric. That's where I'm like, okay, I guess we got to keep talking about this. And so it's a number of things. Obviously, we have the recent case with Jacob Blake, but you had the comments by Earl Acker that hit home, do a lot of Bears content, obviously. And then you have the NBA boycotting. And so it's in the national discussion, as most of these things have been. And so with this comes the same conversation. And what I've realized, and I think most people have, is that whenever we have this discussion about police reform, police brutality, it becomes an exercise in deploying a red herring from the opposers. Most of the things they say are just red herrings to distract from the actual point. And again, I've said for a minute, it boils down to me that either you are purposefully being ignorant as you're just trying to act like you don't know, just to be a troll and sabotage the conversation or try to push people's buttons, or you are just clearly misinformed. It's one of those two, because whenever we have this conversation, it boils down to someone sounding like a little child when they get in trouble. Why did you do this? Well, but everybody else was doing it. No, we didn't ask you about everybody else. Why did you do this? You knew you weren't supposed to do it. But this happened and they did this and he said that. No. We're not talking about all that. You're trying to distract from the point. It's the same thing with this. Well, he was a criminal and he had this record and they had a call about it does not matter. Let me get straight to the heart of the issue. There is no code where it's punishable by death to resist arrest, or it's punishable by death to not comply, or it's punishable by death by any of those means. If a officer is having their life actively threatened, then I can understand the use of lethal force. Outside of that, it should be no excuse. It should be the last of an exhaustive list of options. I don't want to hear about what should happen and what does happen, because look, it doesn't matter. Like, I could have a friend that works at a store and I know that if he's working a certain shift, he can give me some free stuff. So we all know that happens. The boss might know that's a possibility. The people that work there know it happens. So you shouldn't be like, well, that sucks for you, boss, or the owner. You should have known that's what happens when you do that. No, it's not what should happen. Just because it does happen doesn't mean it's right. So all this talk of, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't resist arrest, and so you should have known that you would get shot. No, that does not matter. Why can't we understand that? It does not matter what you think, oh, we know happens. It's what should happen. Just like in the justice system, just like in the educational system, just like in the workforce. Well, we know this happens. We should just accept that. No, you shouldn't just accept that. It is the people's right to voice their opinion and to push back when things aren't happening as it should be. And so to sit here and say, well, if you reach for a knife, you know you're going to get shot. No, I don't want to hear that. There's two officers. There's knife versus a gun, long range versus short range. Like, I don't want to hear that. Yes, you could have somebody threatening you, and there's a litany of ways you can subdue that person. They should not have to die. I don't care that they were a criminal. And then we're having this discussion. Everybody wants to be fast. They're a criminal. They had a criminal record. Okay, look at the number of people who were unarmed and killed. Look at the number of people who were compliant and still got killed. Look at the person who murdered people and still was allowed to walk. So I don't want to hear this conversation of what they should have done and it's their fault, because again, you're distracting from the point. And so it turns into children trying to distract from the point. That's what it sounds like to me. We are talking about the officers in these situations not policing correctly, stepping outside of the bounds of what we want officers to do. And the only thing that people want to retort with is, well, the suspect did this, or I'm sorry, the victim did this. The victim was wanted for that. The call was about it. We're not talking about the victim, but that's the distraction tactic of anybody that's opposed. They want to assassinate the character and make it okay. Same thing they did with George Floyd, and it's ridiculous. Like, I've talked about this exact same thing. None of that is a justification. You could sit here and list a long list of all the reasons and all the ills and all the faults. It's not a justification to die. It's not. And all it does is tell me that you're just focused on the wrong part. Now, that's just point blank, period. That's fact. There's nothing you could argue against with me. I mean, you could tell me what you feel, but I've yet to hear a compelling argument. Trust me, I've heard many conversations. It's a fact. You are focusing on the wrong part because there's no letter of the law that says that's okay for you to do. Now, the bigger problem is we mix in the identity politics and the race. And that's what really boils people. Like this same or this previous instance with Urlacher talking about this. And the number of people who instantly, first of all, if you listen to what I say, I clearly didn't say anything about race. For the longest, I always talked to you about police. I told you it's bigger than a race problem. It's a police problem. It's a power problem. But people listened to what I said or didn't listen and went straight to Black Lives Matter, all this other stuff. And that's the core of it. That's what's pushing this to a narrative where people are being very uneducated about what they're saying, because they are very emotional and upset about the idea of African American people standing up for themselves and calling out inequity, because, and for different reasons, obviously, but in some people's eyes, it's not true. Some people's eyes, people are whining. Some people's eyes, it's your fault. And so that's what really, when you break someone down, that's what they want to talk about. Because I will talk about police reform and people will get pissed because I won't bring race into it. And they're just waiting for me to bring race into it so they can arm themselves with the same stats that they hear from their echo chambers online and the media they watch. They want to use the same stats. They want to use the same storylines, but it doesn't work because I'm not talking about that. And so when we're talking about this idea of bias and prejudice, which again is a issue that plays into the larger part of police as a constitution in my mind, that's where people want to talk about. That's where they really want to get upset, because there's a lot of people that feel that we are targeted as African American people, that we are perceived as more of a threat, and that we are handled differently. And that's definitely a conversation that could be had, but that's the conversation that really upsets people. And so it essentially boils down to a issue of locus of control, which I've talked about many times. Whether you believe nature versus nurture, whether you believe the control comes from the individual, or whether you believe the control comes from the forces around the individual. That goes back, and people think they're prophetic. They think they're original. This stuff goes back a long time. This is psychology. This is how your brain is wired. So some people believe in different locus of control, and those change over time. And that's essentially what we're talking about. There's some that believe that the systems that be, the educational system, the years of systemic racism, all these different things, they don't play a factor. I made it because I made it, because I made my choice, because I did this. I made it because I did the right things, because I'm a good person. And so if you got in trouble or if you didn't make it, it's because of your actions, your decisions. It's because you're not a good person. And then obviously there's people, and more people, that are starting to realize, or at least believe, the effects of the world around us in this country really not determines, but plays a large part into where we end up. And that if you look at what has transpired over years, that leads a lot of section of people to a certain outcome. And so that's the balance that goes on between people who believe one thing and the other thing. But either way, with your belief, it sparks an emotional and very passionate debate that has caused people to go to the lengths that they are. And obviously there's people that want to get guns and everything else and go stand outside. Obviously there's people that actually want to kill people. And so people are moved to that. And then there's a whole bunch of people that just want to sit online and fight with everybody and curse people out because they know they don't have to actually face any consequence. So there's all that. And I recognize that. But I think that for a lot of people, especially people that want to undermine any progression, they use that as a way to undercut the argument, because some people are emotional, some people are wrapped up, and they won't be able to focus on the topic at hand. They won't be able to articulate when they're upset about something. People try that with me all the time. It's not going to work. Trust me, if I got the time, we will talk. And the more you get people to talk that are trolls or that are uninformed, the more they sound like a troll or they're uninformed. And you can see it, and everybody can read the comments and like, wow, yeah, you might have said one comment people agree with, but the more you talk, they're like, wow, that person doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'll go there with you, because I'm not one of those people that's easily shook that way. Because I'm not sitting here trying to battle you. I'm trying to talk about the truth in the middle. I'm not trying to tell you I'm right and you're wrong. I'm listening to what you're saying, how you got to that point, and I'm telling you what I'm saying, how I got to that point, and we're looking at the truth in the middle. And so it is disheartening, it's frustrating, it's draining to hear this conversation over and over, but it's a very simple one. Police need to police in the correct way. Whether you're a criminal or not, I believe our justice system is innocent until proven guilty. I believe you get to go to court. I believe you get to have a just process. Is that always that way in the courtroom? No. Is it always that way with the justice system or the legal system with lawyers and everything? No. Is it always that way in legislation? No, but that's what it should be, and we'll continue to push until it is. And so is it always how that goes down in the streets with cops? No, but it should be. You chose that job. You chose the power. You chose the responsibility. You have to be held to a higher standard and be more accountable. And so again, in this case, where people want to try to act like you're defending or you're condoning criminals, it's not true. What we're condoning is that you don't have to die. You shouldn't have to die. And the more and more we think, or as cops, and the more as society, we think that, okay, if you're a criminal, they can handle you however they want to, then the more and more, when they believe you're a criminal, if you look like me and we think you're a criminal or we suspect you're a criminal, well, then I'm going in with the mentality I get to handle you a certain way, even if I'm not that type of person. And so that's the quick thing I want to say about it. It's frustrating, but we'll continue to move forward. So go to the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening. Oh, sorry. Thank you for going out of bounds.